We are listening to the cycling podcast at the Giro d'Italia in association with Rafa. Today we are in Bergamo.
Kotze čitene kotze vicine, nus pigude šikora, kotze čitene kotze vicine, nus pigude šikora, se non mangiano le femmine.
In Bergamo you have to eat polenta e osei.
What is polenta e osei?
It's polenta is made with mice and osei is a little bird.
Mice and a little bird? I hope not.
I think that's maize and a little bird, no?
Spaghetti bolognese?
What? Spaghetti? There are spaghetti bolognese.
Oh, not this again.
Not this again. That was Pier Maulini. Good friend of ours mentioned the other day, our gastronomic oracle.
And a photographer working on the race, yes?
Polenta e osei is a dolce, it's a dessert. And I don't really have much of a sweet tooth. Yes, yeah, look, he's disgusted. Yes.
Sweet. It's not sweet. It's not dessert. Polenta osei.
Oh, dear.
Oh my,
Off to
oh my word, off to a terrible start. We're going to settle this up. Pierre, I spoke to Marco Pinotti half an hour ago. He's from Bergamo. He told me that polenta e osei è un dolce, is a sweet.
Maybe my Pinotti is crazy. Polenta osei is not sweet. No. It's not dessert. No.
Hello, I'm Lionel Burney and I'm with Daniel Freed.
Hello, Lionel.
And that was Pierre Maulini, sorry. Pierre Maulini, our friend and bolognese expert, imploring us to have polenta this evening because we're in Bergamo.
Polenta e osei is different. It's a sweet. I'm sure. Well, Lionel, I'm confused now. A bit like, in the same way that I was confused about the bolognese. I'm confused now about polenta e osei. Bergamo's pretty famous for polenta, but also polenta e osei, I think, is a dessert, or I thought was a dessert. Marco Pinotti, brought up in Bergamo, lives in Bergamo, told me it was a dessert. But Pierre Maulini, our photographer friend, question him at your peril.
Well, maybe we can have it for main and dessert. We'll order it this evening and see what arrives. Daniel, here we are in Bergamo, not far from the finish line where stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia finished a couple of hours ago. And what a stage it was. It was held on very similar terrain to Il Lombardia, the Tour of Lombardy, and we were served up an absolute classic, weren't we? As the second week of the Giro comes to a close, we were treated to a classic race.
We were, Lionel, particularly that finale. I mean, it looked like an exciting finale on paper, with the little climb up there to Bergamo Alta and then the two climbs that came before that, Selvino and the Miragolo San Salvatore, I think it's called. You know, it was one that was probably never going to affect the general classification an awful lot, but it threatened to coax a couple of the big boys into the ring, and it sort of did. I mean, Nibali, we saw him attack on the climb to Bergamo Alta, and I think we see this a lot with Nibali now, that he does really play to the crowd, but he shouldn't be criticised for it, because I think he has a real sense of the need to put on a show. I mean, I've been very impressed at this Giro by the crowds around the Bahrain Merida bus. He really has attained, I wouldn't say iconic status necessarily in Italy, but certainly, you know, 2 or 3 years ago when he'd already won a number of Grand Tours, you would come to Italy and you would have no real sense that he was a well-known public figure, and you know, he would be maybe supported a bit more enthusiastically than other riders, but not to any great extent. Whereas on this Giro, every day around the Bahrain Merida bus, there's a huge crowd, people chanting Nibali's name, and I get the impression that he's really sort of embedded in the affections now of the Italians, and I do think that today was partly about that. I think it was partly playing to a fantastic, huge Giro crowd, which is not something we see that often anymore.
No, well, he gave it a go over the last climb, didn't he? And it wasn't successful because it was a day for Bob Jungels of Quick Step Floors, and what a fantastic performance by him in the last 5 or 6 kilometres. Just recap the stage. It was an incredible race, stage 15 from Valdengo to Bergamo, 199 kilometres. It was incredibly fast, an average of 46.486 kilometres an hour. The first 2 hours were run at a speed of over 51, 52 kilometres an hour. And the reason for that was because so many teams and riders knew that today was their absolute last chance to win a stage. With so much climbing and a time trial to come, basically reduces the chances for a lot of teams to nil. And so the pressure to get into the break was enormous right from the start. And of course the bunch, or riders in the bunch, didn't want to let a group go until they had their men in there and they felt the representation was suitable, because there was also a very good chance that it would go all the way to the finish. So it took 110 kilometres for a serious move to get any headway. That doesn't mean there weren't moves up the road at certain points in the stage, and we saw the likes of Jeremy Roy, of Francis Dejeur up the road, and then there was a group with Jens van Rensburg of Dimension Data and Julien Moreno of Villiers. Phil Dijkenen was in there for Sky, and that group really was the one that provided the springboard for the final part of the race when the two climbs came into play. Pierre Rolland made it across for Cannondale, and then very late on Luis Leon Sanchez of Astana got across. There was a little crash for Nairo Quintana on the descent of the San Salvatore. He hit the ground, and the Movistar team car stopped on the corner to make sure he was all right, get him back on his bike. Not a very wise place for it to stop there. A little bit of controversy
Tom
about
Dumoulin sort of calmed things down, didn't he? There was a very chivalrous gesture from him. Certainly, it was a week ago today, wasn't it, when there was controversy about whether Movistar should or shouldn't have waited when Geraint Thomas crashed. But no doubt that today Dumoulin did try to calm things down.
He did indeed. And then it was the race for the finish, and it looked like Rolland was going to do something, or maybe Luis Leon Sanchez. They were the two that were looking most likely in that front group. But then on the final climb, it all came back together, and Bob Jungels in the white jersey launched a really huge attack, very, very fast through there's only a sliver of road left between the very big crowds on that hill. Nibali also had a go, and that move basically forced all of the GC riders to react. And then we had this fantastic finish from Bob Jungels. He basically led himself out and then won the sprint. Really, really impressive stage win for Jungels. Of course, Quick-Step Floor's 5th stage win of the race. They are having an absolutely fantastic Giro because they won those 5 stages. Jungels has been in pink and is looking good in the white jersey, and Fernando Gaviria is still in the Ciclamino jersey. So although I describe this as Quick-Step's B-plus team, really they've been incredibly impressive. There was some bad news though for Astana's Tanel Kangat, who was lying 7th overall this morning. He is out of the race. A really bad crash where the bunch was trying to go, well, it was split 2 ways round a traffic island. Kangat was left with nowhere really to go. Whether he was trying to bunny hop the island or not, it's not conclusive from the footage, but he had nowhere else to go, and he hit a road sign which wasn't protected by a hay bale or anything like that. He has a suspected broken elbow and is out of the race. And at the finish, Nairo Quintana won the sprint for 2nd place behind Jungels. So although he had that crash, he has gained 6 seconds today, and the trimming away of Tom Dumoulin's lead starts already. Dumoulin's lead is now down to 2:41. Everybody else behind where Kangat was shifts up a place, but the overall hasn't really altered too much. Just a note to say that Adam Hansen finished safely. He hurt his hand in a crash on the approach to Europa yesterday. He will be very keen to get through this race because it's his 17th consecutive Grand Tour. He's ridden and finished every single one of them since the 2011 Vuelta. Caleb Ewan, who won the stage at Albello Bello last week and has done a lot of work for Orica Scott in the last couple of days, he has pulled out because there are no more stage opportunities for him. Tomorrow is a rest day, and then it's mountains until the time trial to Milan. But Daniel, Quick-Step and Bob Jungels, really impressive today.
They were. Just another bit of injury news, Lionel. King Kenny Ellison, the Team Sky, finished safely. Well, he didn't finish in the front group, but I am led to believe I was at their bus at the finish, and he's okay. The King is alive. Long live the King. Quick-Step, yeah, they really have developed over the last 3 or 4 years this incredible winning knack, and very reminiscent of HTC High Road. They go to every race with guys who are capable of winning. And their budget is not enormous. It's big, but it's not enormous, and wins come from all sorts of different sources, and it's just very, very impressive. And Jungels today showed how versatile he is. Watching Tom Dumoulin over the last couple of days, you've sort of thought that in 2 or 3 years this could be the kind of performance that that Bob Jungels is offering in Grand Tours. You know, started predominantly as a time trialist, certainly a very powerful rider, but is becoming a better and better climber. But then you also see Jungels do something like he did today, and it was, as you said, Lionel, more or less a classics course, and he's very fast as well. And he's gonna win one-day races. He's gonna get a lot of opportunities in hard one-day races, and yeah, what a race it's been for them already.
Yeah, they've won a third of the stages so far. Quite a strike rate, that. But you mentioned Bob Jungels being fast, but everybody was fast today, weren't they? I mean, the race it wasn't wind assisted as far as we could tell. It was just very, very rapid, and they were 20 minutes up on the. I think the Gruppetto was 20 minutes up on the fastest schedule or the slowest schedule, one or the other. They were finished much quicker than anticipated, and as I say, the average speed of 46.486 is quick, particularly when you consider those climbs at the finish. Because the second category one, it wasn't a pimple, was it? It was a proper climb.
And a lot of that lineup, particularly in the finale, had to do with Orica, Scott, and their two Spanish riders, Carlos Verona and Ruben Plaza, who did an awful lot of pulling and certainly contributed to making it a scorchingly fast race. At the finish, I caught up with Adam Yates and Matt White, the director sportif at Orica. They were slightly disappointed that Yates couldn't pull off the victory and he finished fourth in the end, but as you'll hear them explain, it was a pretty unusual sprint.
Yeah, pretty hard. It's pretty hard out there, as always, but no, feeling good, and the guys did an awesome job. We kind of sat back a little bit at the beginning and let the attacks happen, and it kind of carried on for, how many Ks? Like 110 Ks, so not often that happens. Then as soon as the break went, then we got the guys on the front and controlled the race. So yeah, awesome effort from the team, and couldn't quite finish it off there. I was feeling good, but downhill sprint, and big Jungels, he's like good 10-15 kilos heavier than me, so now congrats to him, and we'll enjoy the rest day tomorrow and try again the day after that.
And the sprint itself, were you a bit too early going?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm no specialist in those sprints, so I opened up about 300, just after 300 metres to go. I thought it might be enough, but I got to within 50 metres to go, and everyone came flying around me, so but that's how it goes. Legs are feeling good, and like I said before, we'll just keep trying.
You said it was very fast. Well, it was obviously very fast for first 100k. It's also very hot, and it's been hot the whole Giro. Is it at the point where it's starting to affect people, or it will start to affect people?
I think it's already affecting people. I think it's not often the Giro is 30 degrees. It's my first Giro, and I was expecting -1 on top of Stelvio and snow, the big snow banks. So it's just one of them things. That's all that's how it is, really.
And just lastly, Adam, people are looking at the day over the Stelvio and saying that's where we need to make Dumoulin blow up. Is that the most obvious place to attack him?
Well, I mean, last week's pretty solid. Didn't have to happen on one day. But to be honest, I reckon he's looking pretty strong. He yesterday when he won, playing with everyone really, wasn't he? So it'll be interesting. And he's also got the final 2T in the last day, so in my opinion, he's a big favourite, and we'll just see if someone can drop him.
Oh, look, we wanted to win the stage. We're not disappointed because at the end of the day, Adam's done his best in the sprint. The team's given him every chance to win, and he got beaten by faster guys in the last 50 metres.
You disappointed that you had to do so much of the work there today, and there wasn't a bit more initiative taken by other teams?
Oh no, look, I've got no interest in what other teams are doing. We've got our race, our plan, and we'll do that. We got some big boys who aren't going to be so much help in the Dolomites next week, so we used them today, and I think they did a great job and gave Adam every chance to win today's stage.
And how's he shaping up generally, Matt? I mean, obviously a week ago he was taking a bit of a blow to his morale, but he seems to have recovered.
Mate, the blow to his morale might have been immediate, which is natural, but his morale has never been low at this race at all. It's obviously there's a difference between being frustrated, as we all were, and having low morale, and we've never had a low morale. There's a big difference, and it's natural for anyone who's put that much preparation into trying to win the Giro to be frustrated, myself included. But the morale on this team hasn't waned for 1 second.
Hi, I'm Mike Thompson of Team Wiggins, and you are listening to the Cycling Podcast in association with Rafa. My favourite ride is back home in the North York Moors, just riding around valley or a dale called Bransdale. yeah, it's very lumpy. Lots of short steep climbs. Sort of takes in quite a few of the local roads, and yeah, it's a good ride around there.
The Rafa Cycling Club is the largest global community of its kind. Members share their passion for the road through rides, events, exclusive club kit and racing. Find out more at rafa.cc.
Thank you very much to Rafa for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast. Just to mention a few products that are available from Rafa. Their Copy Flyweight jersey is available now at rafa.cc. It's inspired by Fausto Coppi's first great victory at Abertoni in the 1940 Giro. Check that out at rafa.cc. Also a range of t-shirts inspired by the mountain stages that are taking place later this week, and they were launched a couple of days ago and are available now. Now, Daniel, we've been joined by the one and only.
We've been joined by your DMOP happy Lionel. You're going home tonight, and so is Ciro. Ciro, you're sleeping at home tonight and you're thrilled, aren't you? You're over the moon.
Listeners, you can't imagine my motivation. Do you know what does it mean for me to leave a big luggage and to start for the last week of a grand tour like this only with a little trolley? Do you know what does it mean, listeners? I'm so happy.
Should just explain, Giro lives in Milan, right? Which is right close to Bergamo.
Of course, from Torre del Greco, correct? In Campania.
Correct, perfectly. Unfortunately, no sea and no beaches in Milan, but really, listeners, a great city in my opinion. I love only 3 cities without sea and without beaches: Milan, London and Madrid. The rest doesn't exist for me.
Okay, Ciro, okay. Serious Ciro. We need serious Ciro again. Lo Squalo, the shark, Vincenzo Nibali. It was pretty impressive, the attack they put in on Bergamo Alta, but it didn't really bear any fruits, did it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, this attack shows us that his condition is not bad. Certainly, if I had to compare his condition to the condition that he had last year at the same point of the Giro, this year is in a better shape. But rivals are more important this year, are stronger, and so according to me, I mean, it will be difficult for him to realize such a comeback as the comeback of last year.
Also, Ciro, I think this is something we're hearing when we're talking to a few of the contenders, that the level, the standard in this Giro is higher than they expected. Julien Pinot, the coach of Thibaut Pinot, told me this morning that they'd done all their sums and they thought they knew what it was going to take to win this Giro, and they've come here and Pinot is performing at that level, but Dumoulin, for example, is 2 or 3 or 4% higher, better than they expected.
Well, I didn't know your conversation with Julien, but it's more or less the same topic and the same conversation that I had with Paolo Slongo, another shadow of our friend Shark, his trainer. He told me exactly the same. The Nibali's level is a good level, but not sufficient to be at the same level of Dumoulin, because, well, we have also to consider that apart of Dumoulin, for example, between the second and the 5th place, between Quintana and Nibali, there is 1 minute, so not so much. It's Dumoulin really of another level so far.
The thing I thought about Nibali's little attack today, it brought to mind when he attacked on the run into Sheffield at the start of the 2014 Tour de France, and he didn't look as impressive today as he did back then, of course.
Lionel, I must confess that you are really, how can I say, you are able to understand every detail of the race, because I completely agree with you. But we have also to consider that from the Tour de France of 2014, we are 3 years more, and I remember really well a conversation that I had in Otakam in that tour when Nibali was going to win his 4th stage in that tour. His coach Paolo Slongo told me 3 years ago, but I remember as it was yesterday, this is the best Vincenzo ever seen, and in the future normally we couldn't see a Vincenzo like this any longer. So, a kind of prediction, listeners.
Wow. So, Ciro, yesterday, we waited at the Bahrain Merida bus for Nibali, and a few riders came in, and I mentioned in the podcast yesterday that Visconti said something quite notable. He said that he was sure that Dumoulin was going to crack, and actually we heard in the first part from Matt White, the Orica Scott Director Sportif, and he's also pretty sure that Dumoulin is going to be easier than people think to crack. He's quite confident that someone will crack Dumoulin. What do you think now?
Oh, well, I'm not so confident. I think that Dumoulin was going almost to win the Vuelta almost 2 years ago, and the Vuelta has a lot. Also, that Vuelta had a lot of mountains. Certainly, he lost the day before the final stage for a great attack combined by Astana and Aru, but he was already strong in the mountains, and I think that after almost 2 years, he certainly did a lot of improvements in the mountains. I know that talking with his coach that he trained also at Teide in Tenerife in altitude for this kind of stages with more mountains up over 2,000 meters. So in my opinion, it won't be easy to beat him.
Not going to be easy for you in the last week either, because we've only got mountains. Only mountains.
Exactly, listeners, but with this motivation of today, that I come back home tonight, and with you, that you are the most important motivation for me, I'm really confident that I can improve myself in the last week. And I have also a question. Why we could organize a Grand Tour of 4 weeks and not of 3 weeks? Why not? For me, the fourth week could be maybe the best one for me.
As we've said before, the fourth week is the Pippo Pozzato week.
In this moment, Pippo for me, maybe also the fifth week, not the fourth, listeners.
We are listening to the cycling podcast at the Giro d'Italia, supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you to Science in Sport for sponsoring the cycling podcast. A reminder that if you want to get 20% off all of Science in Sport's products, go to scienceinsport.com, and when you check out, enter the code CPOD20, CPOD20. Daniel, the big question now as we reach the rest day is, when the race resumes, will Tom Dumoulin crack? And if he does, when will he crack?
Well, it's an intriguing question, Lionel, and so many differing opinions on this. We mentioned Visconti and what he thought. I spoke to Dario Cataldo of Astana this morning, and he said that he was very confident that Dumoulin wasn't going to crack. He said it would take a circus act or something of that ilk. I don't know what he called it, a trapeze artist, or I don't know. What else do you find in a circus? You've probably been to more circuses than me. I've never been to a circus.
I don't actually like the circus, Daniel. I think it's cruel. I think it's cruel.
I think it's very cruel, Lionel.
I think it's very cruel.
I think it's cool. I'm a man of the natural world, as you know. I would never condone circuses or even go to one. Anyway, Cataldo thinks it's going to take a lot, let's forget about circuses, to dislodge Dumoulin. Others, like Matt White, for example, pretty confident that Orica and Movistar as well are going to be able to give him a very hard time on the stage to Bormio on Tuesday, which is probably the hardest stage of the race. They might be able to isolate him. Interesting, we've talked a little bit over the last couple of days about the stress levels and the stresses involved with leading a race. Dumoulin has defaulted on his press conference a couple of times in the last couple of days. The Sunweb press officer appeared mid-afternoon today, and he talked to RCS, the race organisers' press chief, and said, look, Tom's not coming in today, or he doesn't want to do it. He's already got to go on Italian TV. Plus, last night he was in the press room for 2 hours in the end, and he was very late coming down the mountain, wasn't he? That said, he was on Italian television tonight, again looking very, very relaxed, looking completely unflustered. So, he seems to be coping pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, he wasn't in the press room for 2 hours, but he was up there a good 2 hours after the finish because of all the things he has to go through as the race leader, not least dope control, which, nature dictates how long that takes, of course, because he has to produce a urine sample, and then after that, coming into the press room, and then they had a police escort down from Europa, didn't they? And so, the days get long And I don't blame them. If you're going to miss a press conference and you're going to try to get back to the hotel as quickly as possible, the night before the rest day is the best possible time to do it, because you're maximising the opportunity to rest and recuperate. But he looks cool. He did talk about how he doesn't feel the same under pressure that he did a couple of years ago yesterday, and so cumulative experience, it does count for an awful lot. And the other difference, we've been reviewing how he came to grief in that Vuelta in 2015. I think the big difference here is that he's got that time trial still to come. So it isn't just a case of hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. It's hanging on with that little bit of a buffer. And so if he does have an iffy half an hour, an iffy hour out on the road, and he can just focus on getting across the line as quickly as possible, there will still be a chance. It's not like he's got to reach the end of the last mountain stage still in the lead. He doesn't need to ride the time trial in the pink jersey. He could quite easily regain it in the final stage, and I think psychologically that makes a huge difference to the job that's in front of him.
Well, he's got the experience, Lionel, of that Vuelta. The problem is that others in the field have got the experience of having seen him collapse, and they know they've got maybe a roadmap of how to do it. One such man who knows how to break Tom Dumoulin is Giuseppe Martinelli, who was kind of the architect of Astana, really taking Dumoulin to the cleaners on that decisive stage in the Vuelta 2 years ago. Martinelli is with Astana here. He hasn't got a team that's capable of winning the Giro, but I asked him this morning about how, with 4 riders primarily, Andre Zeitz, Luis Leon Sanchez, Fabio Aru, the eventual winner of the Vuelta, and Mikel Landa, he set about really giving Dumoulin the worst day of his career and taking the leader's jersey off him in the Vuelta.
L'intelligenza tattica qua ha vinto proprio di forza.
We put Luis Leon Sanchez in the break with Zeitz, and we attacked Dumoulin indirectly. The first person to attack him was Landa. Landa put him on the ropes, he dropped him, then Aru and Landa got together and pulled off our tactical manoeuvre, if you want to call it that. It worked because we isolated him against 3 of our riders. There's one team at this Giro at the same level as ours, then Movistar. Definitely. Movistar is the only team that can do something similar. Vincenzo could profit from it, but I doubt whether Vincenzo's team could instigate the move. Quintana and Movistar are the only ones strong enough to pull off something similar, and I think they'll do it. To my mind, they have to do something on the first descent of the Stelvio on Tuesday, after the Mortirolo, because there's too much flat road after that. They'll have to make Dumoulin's team chase, make them suffer, then maybe somewhere we'll bring it back together. But on the Stelvio, Movistar have to go for their knockout. Dumoulin's team is definitely stronger here than it was at that 2015 Vuelta. Nonetheless, if it was my team fighting to win this Giro, I'd definitely attack on Tuesday and not later. At the moment, Dumoulin really is the strongest.
Più avanti, perché secondo il mio punto di vista in questo momento è il più forte veramente.
So Daniel, if the time trial is in the pros column for Tom Dumoulin, in the cons column is the fact that there are so many riders and teams that can attack him and cause problems. Not just Quintana and Movistar, Pinot and FDJ, Nibali and Bahrain, possibly Zakharin and Katusha, but then riders lower down, the likes of Mollema, Pozzovivo, Jungels even, who might be trying to move up the classification, might have their eyes on podium position or just going for stage wins. There's going to be a lot of aggression, and Dumoulin and Sunweb can't chase everybody, and so if they're going to have to pick which moves they monitor and prioritise. If they go after everything right from the start in an attempt to kind of keep a lid on things, that might be the way they come unstuck. They need to be much more patient, I think, and just go after the one that, identify the clearest danger on each given day and go after that on that day, and leave everything else to kind of come out in the wash behind them, and not worry too much about the sort of less significant battles, because they could quite easily get drawn into things they don't need to get drawn into.
Well, Lionel, I'm getting nervous for Tom Dumoulin just thinking about it. I'm getting more nervous than you were in the south of Italy after the spiders and the mafia and what else
sharks,
was it? The sharks. I think he's a bit of a... Just when you consider all the different permutations, I think he's a bit of a sitting duck at the moment. It would be nice to see him. Well, I think a lot of people would like to see him pull it off, but got serious doubts. Lionel, talking of nerves and talking of your Giro, you overcame them. You've made it through. Almost made it to the other end. You've been replaced. Tactical substitution. The Buffalo's coming in tomorrow. I'm picking him up at the airport.
Yeah.
And how's it been?
Oh, well, I was wondering if the sad music was going to start playing, because this is the end of my Giro. Always planned to go home after a couple of weeks, like a tubby sprinter. I'm skipping the mountains, resting up, ready for the Tour de France in July. It's been fantastic, Daniel. I've loved the journey, watching Italy change. A similar sort of journey to last year, but I have to say you've done fantastically well with the accommodation. We've stayed in some wonderful places, incredibly cheap. I mean, if you know, relative to France, certainly, the prices of some really nice accommodation, all easy to find on booking.com, I think, wasn't it, Daniel? That's been a revelation to me, as has the food. I've learned a lot. I started the Giro last year completely bamboozled by the antipasti, prima piatti, secondi piatti.
Well,
very nervous about getting it wrong. I must admit, the generosity of the Italians to force feed you to eat and sample as much and as many courses as perhaps added a little more to my waistline than I had anticipated, but it's been a wonderful experience. And I can't honestly say I think I'm going to have the best view of the mountain stages now. The race is it becomes a television event from this point on, doesn't it? Because there's going to be so much to watch in those final stages. So in a funny way, although I'm sad to be going, I'm looking forward to watching it on TV and listening to you and Richard cover it in the cycling podcast. That'll be fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lionel.
Well, we better go and check that our car is still where we left it, because
someone forgot to put another ticket in the windscreen.
Yeah. Well, what happened was we got to Bergamo this afternoon, and the car park that had been earmarked for all the people working on the race was full. And we had to go and park it on a street, and I put a ticket in the window, or rather you put a ticket in the window, and then I was supposed to go and renew it, and I completely forgot, Daniel. I'm sorry about that. So hopefully it will still be there. We better go and check. But thank you very much, Daniel.
Goodbye, Lionel, and good night.
A reminder that you can watch the Giro d'Italia live and exclusive on Eurosport and Eurosport Player. UK viewers can also watch highlights of each stage at 10 p.m. on free-to-air channel Quest. There's a special offer for the Eurosport Player, £29.99 for an all-access pass for the rest of 2017. Details of availability, compatible devices and full terms and conditions can be found on the Eurosport Player website, uk.eurosportplayer.com. You've been listening to the Cycling Podcast in association with Rafa. Thanks to them, and thanks to our other sponsors, Science and Sport and Maserati, and to All Press Espresso for supporting our morning show, Kilometre Zero. The music in this episode is by Amara Terra. Thanks to them. Thanks to those who help keep us on the road, in particular David Luxon, Jonathan Rowe, Nick Christian and Simon Gill. And thanks to Alex Adey, who produced this episode.